Hallo miteinander, I'm Gesh86 and this is Touhou Artificial Dream in Arcadia. It's a role-playing game and dungeon crawler that has already made it onto my channel twice. The first was near the beginning of the year when we analyzed its demo. The second time was a non-commentary showcase of a boss fight, mostly meant to notify you that the full game had come out. Still, featuring it to only that small combined amount felt like a cop-out to me. We're going to take the proper deep dive, as this game thoroughly deserves it. Without a doubt, this is the most relevant fan game to come out in months, even kind of shaming the only pretty solid Touhou New World we've had a while ago. That is, if you really want to compare two fundamentally different genres. We are starting with a checkup of our party composition. Sumireko is a bulky back row supporter, and as the protagonist, always has to be part of the group. Kagero is a fast and high damage frontline fighter. Eren Yagokoro MD is a tanky frontline fighter and supporter, very reliable at everything she does, although she has low agility. Lastly, there's Reisen, a back row cleric and wizard. Note that she is specifically spelled Udonge, as the other manga-exclusive Reisen is also in the game. We are currently in the human village, the safest haven you can find in the game, the only proper town. This gentleman NPC has a massive crush on Ran Yakumo. To my knowledge, he is not too relevant for the plot of this game, but I will admit, he has good taste in women. Somewhat hidden over here is the village's main merchant. The real Reisen Udonge in Inaba, not to be confused with the sleeper clone that's accompanying us. She has a good stock of consumables, but you'll likely spend more money on her direct healing services. It's 1 coin for every hit point and 3 for every magic point. With those volatile costs, it's not easy to turn a profit in the early game. In the southwest waits the bookstore clerk Kozusu, who will not actually ever take your money. Suzunan is simply a menu for your yokai grimoires, which fundamentally alter the rules of the game. The upper two, for example, were just dynamic difficulty selections. In most cases, it's intended to not have grimoires active, still, it's clever to keep them in mind. I personally really like the option that reveals extra tiles during exploration. Hieda no Akio is the town mayor and will typically remind you where to go for the main quest. For us, that would be the Forest of Magic to the west of the village. Our party's level is around the mid to late 20s. Progress-wise, we are sandwiched somewhat between the first and second third of the game. Connecting all locations is the Gensokyan overworld. To the north is Myoren Temple, which not only serves as a side dungeon, but letting yokai Jesus into her life also allows Sumireko to reassign all of her attributes. There are no random encounters in the overworld, only the dungeons count as wilderness. The Forest of Magic will be locked until you've obtained a gas mask from Ayente, which can counter all the noxious mushroom spores. You do not have to equip the gas mask into your head slot, as no matter what you do, the many poison tiles of the Forest of Magic will affect you. Every step we take carries a small chance to have any party members poisoned. I am now noticing that presenting you a literal Miyazaki swamp is not exactly a great look for the game, but please bear with it. We have the means to defend. An enemy encounter with feral sleepers has just begun. Artificial Dream in Arcadia has really gone the extra mile with how many Touhou girls it features. Potentially, everyone can be found or recruited from PC98's Touhou 1 over any officially recognized written works, all the way to the new Touhou 19, which is, by the way, only 1 month older than this game. We are bombarding this group of 3 with our multi-targeting skills, but we're also taking heavy hits in return. Kagero almost dropped dead. The Lukaru is a rather flimsy party member. Her abundance of hair doesn't seem to be cushioning anything. We've had several attacks miss due to Sunny's evasion-enhancing Hivayu Atma spell, but we were still lucky enough to not suffer any casualties. Reviving allies is possible, yet costly in healing fees or 30 magic points from the Animus spell. Once Alice is no more, we rack up some coins and experience points. It was enough to level up Sumireko, whose stats you can freely configure as she grows. The sleepers do their customization automatically, basically always staying within their original build. Vitality is our Sumireko's highest stat. Makes sense to have her durable, as it's an immediate party wipe if she ever falls. Apart from our 4 active combatants, you can bring backup characters. We are 1 protagonist and 7 sleepers strong at the moment. You might be wondering why I'm not more diligent in removing Reisen's poison. I'd say that's only worth it if you find an island of non-swamp tiles, like here. The Deluo spell to remove poison and all other ailments is not exactly cheap on magic points. The affliction rate in the Forest of Magic is high enough that it's much more economical to wait until everyone is sick and barfy, and only then cure them with the party-wide Hideluo spell. We just grabbed a consumable, the booster. It was a good opportunity to look at our inventory, as well as the equipment screen. I don't let Sumireko attack in melee too often, as she has a back row penalty. The scalpel from Ayante is negligibly weak, but the agility bonus that comes with it will benefit all other actions. Once again, we are faced with the same enemy group as before, yet because our SP meter is filled more, we'll be pursuing a different outcome this time. As you've probably heard, Artificial Dream in Arcadia is a spoof on the early Shin Megami Tensei games. Just like there's demon recruiting in those, there's sleeper hijack here, and this is what it looks like. A horizontally scrolling shooter. Patterns are unique to each sleeper, and their difficulty depends on how injured the enemy was and your level difference to them. We get 3 options upon the successful capture. We're keeping Alice, if not for active use, then at least to have her catalogued. Upon enemy collection, encounters always end, even if there were other opponents left. You also don't get experience or money, and that's perfectly intended. For the purposes of getting stronger, you should frequently fight to the end, but the item or money transformation options upon capture are in fact the best ways to get rich quick. This whole system of choosing experience for some fights, party members for others, and resources for the rest reminds me of something. There once was a Nintendo DS RPG of the Lunar franchise that both fans and critics absolutely panned and despised. One ingredient of its recipe for disaster was that you had to pick only drops or experience after every battle. It's interesting that Artificial Dream in Arcadia does something comparable, yet its community views it as a smash hit. That really shows that very few design ideas are fundamentally flawed. It matters more how thoughtfully and meticulously a developer implements them so that everything fits together. Here's a new face, the living Jizo Narumi Yatadera. Among the encounters of the Forest of Magic, she is a pretty rare spawn. Obviously, we want to win her over. Like in other gotta catch 'em all RPGs, such as Pokemon, you have to be careful not to kill an enemy while whittling them down. It shouldn't be a big problem in Narumi's case. She is a bulky archetype. As expected, this statue is not toppled easily. Once again, Kagero lives by a hair, of which she has countlessly many. Perhaps Narumi would be a good replacement, as the zone we are in seems to have many lightning users, to which our wolven friend is very vulnerable. It might sound cruel, but you shouldn't be too attached to your sleepers. Pairs of your minions can be fused into new types, skills can be transferred at the cost of the donor, and late game characters just seem to be a little mightier in general. So even if you get your favorite girl early, you might not want to blindly stick with her. We're Danmakuing again, and oh boy, it's Bullet Golem. Very little about Touhou 16 seems to be challenging until you get to this dreaded Bomb Eater of a spell card. Luckily, this diet version of the original can be handled so long as you know to move and lead the golem. Overall, I think the Danmaku minigame is a great innovation. Some players say it clashes too much with an RPG, but most agree that it's an improvement over the demon conversations of Shin Megami Tensei. From what I've heard, these are cryptic and tend to punish those who don't want to use guides. Narumi could indeed be quite useful, but I'm not too comfortable with her default skill set. She'll be on standby for now. One criticism this game gets is how you may run into boss battles very suddenly, and it's true that it's not the best at telegraphing them. For example, first boss Oku in the Hell of Blazing Fires catches many players off guard. Since then, you've learned to be wary of a dungeon's opposite corner to your starting point. It was equally unexpected to find Marissa's house this quickly. At least our health was topped off, as we do in fact have a battle forced on us. Koakuma is an enemy type that specializes in buff spells. Since there's no mightier opponent than herself to strengthen, this shouldn't be too bad. Interestingly, semi-canonical characters like her are never considered sleepers. Before their summoning, these three were actually generic devils roaming Gensokyo, usually the Scarlet Devil Mansion. It is therefore not possible to hijack a Koakuma, but if you just can't resist the red-headed library assistant, it is possible to fuse a sleeper version of her. For more relevant encounters like this one, we can use our own buff spells. Eren has plenty of them, and others could copy her through the Mimic ability. Ice magic is a severe weakness of Koakuma, so are any attacks that are classed as bullets. Now that this is over, maybe Marissa's questline can get somewhere. Unfortunately, instead of abracadabraing something wonderful, she does a Scatman John and Scapadibi's Louise into existence. Using the Analyze command reveals that the tourist from Makai is a proper boss with lots of elemental magic and even self-healing. Major baddies like her have multiple actions per round, usually 2, in late game even 3, lessening our advantage in numbers. The mentioned Mimic ability really helps in getting buffs up fast, even if we have the spells themselves on very few characters. A commenter on the Mei Ling video tipped me off how strong and versatile this was. Thank you for that. So, turns out we ran into a substantial challenge with extremely little warning. Artificial Dream in Arcadia should have taken a page from Etrian Odyssey, which always emphasizes how your party has just soiled their robes and trousers from the terror of what they can sense in the next room. Granted, later in the game it's not as big of an issue anymore. You'll have to delve so deep into multi-floored dungeons, you'll be happy to finally find a boss before Sumireko's smartphone battery expires. Thanks to the analysis, we learned that Louise is weak to the wind spell Ajira. We don't have much of that in our repertoire, at least Kagero can cast it. Exploiting weaknesses is always a good idea, as it boosts your SP gauge. These SP can be used to certain effects before a turn even starts. In this case, we debuffed Louise's defense. Even though they are well worth using, I tend to not have enough room to bring debuff spells. Remedying this inflexibility through SP commands is a good solution. In the meantime, we've increased our party-wide attack by 3 levels. That's the maximum possible. We can expect to hit some big numbers. I've noticed a surprising amount of late-game bosses have either the Dai Para spell to clean debuffs from themselves, or Dai Atma to wipe all buffs from you in a single action. Depending on the encounter, it may be wise to not overbuff or over-debuff, and instead go on the offense quickly. Luckily, Louise knows no such tricks. I do hope her 800 hit points are exhausted soon, as our MP are running dry. That resource can be regained through tea, coffee, or energy drinks. Those consumables are difficult to come by. We should be so stingy and make do without using any. Even so, we still have to make it back to the human village. And with another Ajira, we send the well-dressed demon back to whence she came. Apart from Mima and Bad Apple Ellie, PC98 characters don't have many superfans. But if you are one of Louise, you can find her sleeper in the post-game or fuse her a little before then. I think she is level 77 by default and would easily solo that real Louise and probably our party as well. Sumireko's quest is to take selfies at noteworthy Gensokyan locations so that a mysterious Dreamers monolith can be opened up floor by floor. Although this worked thrice before after dungeon bosses, Marissa's summoning experiment seems to just not be relevant enough to count as such a milestone. In fact, I think you only do this to take books Marissa stole back to Patchouli. The librarian then increases your magic stat as a reward. Up next, we'll return to the village so that we can look at a few more customization features. On the way there, I want to mention something about Artificial Dream in Arcadia that really surprised me. Sometimes, remarkable fan games come from countries you wouldn't expect them of. For example, the disappearing of Gensokyo was from China at a time when few were, let alone of that high quality. Believe it or not, Bar Holographic Otaku, also known as Potemkin, is Russian. If you ask me to name any other Russian fan game apart from this and the related Udonge in Cross, the only one I know would be Touhou Fan of Destiny, which is known to be a notorious catastrophe. It basically implodes on itself on a technical level, falling into the stereotype of the Russian asset flip and coming off more like a scam than a game. I'd say Bar Holographic Otaku has smashed all stereotyping to bits, showing that an earnest, talented developer can drop top-tier games from anywhere. Now I'm hoping that someday we'll have that definitive German fan game. Through a terminal, we have opened a special sleeper menu that includes the database and the fusion function. We can filter fusing to the sleepers we could make with our current party, and to those we could make with anyone we've ever owned. Even though we can see many powerful specimen at the top of the list, a limitation right now is that no fusion may have a higher level than Sumireko. Due to that, no fusion seems sensible at the moment, but what we can always do is transfer skills. We weren't too happy with Kagero's staying power, however we don't want to lose her formidable moveset. Every skill we want to keep can be given over to Narumi, then we'll have a similar party member that's more suited to our purposes. The character unique skills Under Pressure and Blood-Sucking Universe can unfortunately not be transferred. Those originally belonged to Flandre and Remilia, and Kagero only had them because she was created through a fusion of the Scarlet Sisters. Berserker will be left behind simply because I find it unreliable. Voila, now Narumi is up to the task. A hypothetical task, as I've shown you what it's like to venture into an unexplored dungeon and take on the average boss fight. With that, I think it's time to round off the video and say in conclusion that Artificial Dream in Arcadia didn't just fulfill my expectations, optimistic expectations I might add, but exceeded them. You might be surprised to hear that I've beaten the game in the meantime. A nasty cold kept me from speaking to you any earlier, but at least I can tell you that it was great all the way through. Am Gesch86, bis bald!